Good afternoon, everybody. We're just going to give everybody a couple of minutes, or at least another minute to join before we get started. So please be patient. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Uh, Welcome to Harnessing the Power of AI-Augmented Product Development from Sparq. My name is Janet Pierce. I am the Chief Engineering Officer here at Sparq. I've got over 25 years of experience in software engineering, working for Fortune 500 as well as startups, heavy influence on highly regulated industries such as insurance, finance, fintech, and manufacturing. I've also worked for both global and domestic companies. So an interesting mix of different things in my background. Today, we're going to explore the pivotal role of artificial intelligence in reshaping product development. The integration of AI into product software development is a new era of efficiency, creativity, and precision. Hopefully, we'll provide some insights into how AI is not only enhancing traditional product development processes, but also revolutionizing the field of software development. Today, I have with me two panelists who are two colleagues of mine. I'm really glad that they joined me. Ian, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ian Fox. I'm a director of digital engineering here at Sparq. Got around 25 years of experience working with technology, building software and various solutions. Over the past 13 years or so, I've really been working in the consulting space, primarily working with high-performing agile software product teams, helping clients across a variety of verticals achieve their desired outcomes. Excuse me. Most recently at Sparq, I've been working with Janet and Zain, helping deepen our knowledge and exposure to various AI technologies and tools. I'm excited about the conversation today and looking forward to chatting.
Zain, do you want to go ahead and go?
You bet. Hi, everybody. I'm Zain Naboulsi. I'm an artificial intelligence engineer with Sparq. I've got about 20 years of software engineering experience, with the last 5 being going deep on artificial intelligence and all things thereof. We've been working on quite a number of things. We're excited to talk to you all today about AI and where it's going, and hope you enjoy it.
All right, well, let's just dive into the first topic, right, which is AI's role in modern product development. So from your perspective and from your experiences, how is AI reshaping traditional product development processes? And what are the most significant changes that you've witnessed recently?
Yeah, I can kick us off here. I think what's really exciting about AI impact to the product development lifecycle is that it's really affecting every aspect of it. There's opportunity for benefit from very early on in the product discovery process to, all the way through to monitoring after applications in production. So, we see benefits early, like, you get built out visuals for proto personas. You can engage with generative AI to help with user research, refining and validating questions that you want to bring to users, different tools to generate and bring user insights, even to expand upon the content you have when doing research. And then obviously, I think probably one of the most maybe published and talked about areas where it's having impact is the development tools, the generative AI development coding tools, like with GitHub's Copilot, with Cody, and there's a whole slew of them. But that's really come a long way, and I think we'll touch on that even more deeply a little bit later.
Yeah, and I agree with that, Ian. And also, we're starting to see people fully leverage these large language models out there, particularly the off-the-shelf ones that we're seeing a lot of. Obviously, ChatGPT is a big one. You've got Google Gemini, and you've got Anthropic's Claude 3 being one of my favorites lately, Claude 3 Opus, of course. And so what we're seeing, though, is that, interestingly enough, as people engage with these models and really start using them to generate code, we're really seeing a paradigm shift in the way that development is taking place. It's truly causing people to rethink the way they do development, and so much so that just doing simple usage of ChatGPT or Google Gemini or Anthropic Claude is good enough for most people. Now, though, we're morphing into agentic, more of an agent-centered approach where we'll have multiple agents, multiple models, if you will, that are all talking to each other and doing things like developing in QA and so forth. If any of you have been keeping up with the news, perhaps you heard about Devon. One of the was recently released. It's a multi-agent model that actually essentially autonomously produces software. So at this point, it's only working at about a 14% accuracy rate, but that's way better than what we had before, which was about 2%. So we're seeing a almost a hockey stick type improvement in the ability of fully autonomous software development systems to create software, and that, of course, will cause quite a change in our industry.
I think kind of two other points are, and you kind of touched on this too, Zane, like the accessibility of these tools, right? And how much they've improved, right? So there's this kind of democratization of usage, right? So it's not just huge companies that, have 3 million data scientists involved and things like that who can actually receive a lot of benefit from using these today in a lot of different
Absolutely.
ways throughout the product lifecycle, as you mentioned, Ian. The other thing I would say is as things exist today, right? And this obviously may change over time, and I think it will affect the processes over time, but you can't forego good software development processes, right? You still need QA, you still need all those checks and balances, security testing, all these types of things. Like it doesn't negate good process. Even like these tools that help us write code or write code for us, at this point, they're still at a place where you still have to use good process. Is that fair?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I've heard, and I know you guys have heard the same thing too, about balancing creativity and AI, right? And there's some interesting feedback I've heard from just across the industry about this and concerns around it as well. But how can companies balance AI automation with human creativity and intuition in the product development process?
I think I'll kind of start out with that because we're just talking about ChatGPT and Gemini and Anthropic with Claude. I think that at a base level, that human AI interaction begins really at those public kind of interface interactions that developers are beginning to have. And one of the key ingredients to that is really treating, and it takes a bit of a paradigm shift in the way you think about things, but it really you treat the AI like a peer. There was a seminal moment for me when I was writing some code, and I had been using AI, specifically ChatGPT, in the early days of ChatGPT 3, and I was using it, and at some point I realized that I was no longer thinking of AI as a screwdriver or a wrench to help me turn a bolt, but it had in fact become a full-fledged partner in my development effort. It was interacting with me and I was interacting with it, and we were having a conversation. And at that point, it really kind of sets in, and you realize the power of this new approach that we're taking in this brave new world of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I think it's important to approach those interactions with a little bit of skepticism, especially at this point, and understand that it doesn't replace the need for human engagement and brainstorming. But that said, it can be an enhancement to that process. So I can use, ChatGPT or Gemini, any one of the models to um, really, deepen my own understanding of a particular topic ahead of going in to engage with others, to have a collaborative conversation. I can use it to help prep myself for a deeper, more thoughtful conversation with others. It's not going to have necessarily the up-to-date context for my business, for my specific situation, to be able to have that tight of an interaction unless I really feed it all of that. But it can, it can play devil's advocate. I can have it challenge something that I might be proposing and give me some ammunition to go into that conversation with, if I'm maybe pitching something or trying to get buy-in or other input from others on. So I think it's an enhancement to creativity, not a competition to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think studies for a long, long time have talked about diversity of thought in the workplace, right? That the more diverse, the better outcomes you have, et cetera, et cetera. And even some of, our engineers, some of the feedback from when we first rolled out, Copilot and gave them a chance to do that. I remember one comment in particular, I was doing it one way and it showed me a completely different way to do it. And it was better than what I had come up with, right? And I think that's true, right? You just kind of have to be flexible and understand what you're interacting with. You still have to, to everybody's point, you still have to have that human skepticism behind it, but at the same time, it can really change kind of how you think. And I use it all the time to your point, Ian, about devil's advocate, right? Like I have a perceived notion about something. I'm, thinking that it's this way. And I mean, I think you see this too with predictive analytics projects, right? Where it predicts things that are based on fact, but those who are consuming it may not believe it, right?
Mhm.
It's counter to their what they know anecdotally or intuitively. So we've also heard too, like people sometimes think that it feels like cheating to use these tools, right? That they're not utilizing their creativity, which I think is actually quite the opposite. Um, all right. So innovation in software engineering. Excuse me. Um, how is AI being utilized to foster innovation in software engineering specifically? And can we provide some examples where AI has led to significant advancements or efficiencies?
Yeah, absolutely. We're already starting to see artificial intelligence improve all industries all up in some meaningful way, but particularly the software industry. Artificial intelligence is producing new approaches to algorithms, new approaches to computing all up in terms of how we can um, move the needle forward. For example, we just had NVIDIA's conference, the GTC. They've come out with the Blackwell chip. Some of that was the direct result of artificial intelligence being applied to the production process. So there's a lot going on there. It's very much insinuating itself into every industry in every way, particularly the software industry. We're seeing better code, stronger algorithms, even unique approaches to algorithms that we haven't seen before. And it's not just unique to the software industry. We're seeing it with protein sequences. We're seeing it with metallurgy. We're seeing it everywhere.
Yeah.
The amount of discovery is amazing.
Yeah, I think in the development space specifically, it's becoming more commonplace to have one of these coding tools. For us as a consultancy, we only apply that when we've got explicit consent from a customer. That's really important to us. We think it's important for any organization to have a really strong sort of governance process and be thoughtful and thorough about understanding what it is they're allowing their development teams to use, the licensing and so on. but there are certainly benefits to it. You know, as Zain, you mentioned with Devin, you know, it's passing the SWE bench coding benchmark at 13%, which is, you know, multiple times above any of the other models, but it's still not great. So there's benefit there. I think getting familiar with the tools is really important. But like you mentioned, Janet, having really good process is still super important. Making sure that you're still reviewing, you know, you're doing peer reviews, you're having a good PR process, you have a good unit testing approach and coverage, and that there's a full quality process behind that, because it's not quite to the point yet where you can rely on it on its own. So we have a way.
Agreed. Yeah. And I think we're going to get into a little bit more of that right now too, Ian, which is the challenges in AI integration, right? So what unique challenges do companies face when incorporating AI into software development, and how are these different from general product development challenges? I know I have some thoughts, but who wants to kick us off?
I can kick us off here. I think we touched on this a little bit, but there's a cultural component to this. I think we find some people are very excited about it to a degree where they they make it bigger and maybe better than it actually is, and then we see the opposite where some people just don't even want to engage with it at all. So I think getting some education in front of people, creating opportunity for employees to engage with a tool so that they can start to make a more experience-based, informed decision about the interactions they're having with it. I think that's definitely a challenge that needs to be overcome.
Yeah, yeah. And then, I want to kind of dive a little deeper into what you talked about earlier, Janet, where, there's really two big problems that I'm seeing out in this space amongst the rank and file. Problem number one, particularly among developers for some reason, which really boggles the mind, we have for quite some time, often taken other code like Stack Overflow, copy and paste is a meme now, and used it, to further our development efforts. And yet, for some reason, we're finding that developers feel that using an LLM to help them with their code or to generate code is cheating in some way. That's a pretty interesting approach. It's obviously not one I share, but it's one that we're seeing that's pretty pervasive. There's this concept that if you use AI to help you achieve a goal, that you are in fact cheating. Now, I want to kind of do a sidebar because I see Kurt has a question about higher education. Same thing. It's the exact same thing. The AI is the new calculator. I don't know if people are probably not old enough to remember, but there was a time when we used slide rules. Now we use calculators. AI is the new calculator. So right now, higher education's dealing, and everybody's dealing with software development, everybody's dealing with it the same way we dealt with any new technology. It's chaos right now. It's, oh my goodness, I'm cheating, or we're doing this, or we're doing that. In time, that will settle down. And yeah, see, Kurt remembers. In time, we'll settle down, and we'll treat it like we always have, as an adjunct to the learning experience, something that moves us forward, not something that's holding us back. And that is particularly important for software development. Now, there's the other side of the equation, though, which is quite interesting as well. And that is the fact that artificial intelligence, unfortunately, has a propensity to lie. We call it hallucinations. And it will lie very, very, very convincingly. And so we are constantly on guard against the hallucinations that may be produced from these large language models. Now, I can attest from the early days of using AI that we used to have a lot of hallucinations. You used to could go to any LLM, and particularly the early ones, you could go to them and say, hey, tell me about the new Coke flavor called, you know, purple grape or something that doesn't exist. And it would tell you convincingly, yes, this is the purple grape and it's awesome and it's selling and all kinds of crazy stuff. They've managed to tamper down hallucinations quite a bit with the latest models, but they're still there. There's still occasions where it will absolutely bald-faced lie to you. And unless you're, you know, trust but verify, unless you're verifying, you can fall a victim to it. And there have been some pretty famous incidents of that. We've seen them in the news. So yes, I think that there's, you know, there's definitely challenges, and those are two of the big ones that we're looking at.
Well, I think also to address kind of the elephant in the room and a lot of the discussion, a lot of industries are really, really risk averse, right? And um, I think of some of the challenges from that perspective too, especially when you look at, you know, insurance, healthcare, fintech, finance, things like that. Do you, Ian, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. And David commented in chat about this some degree too, in that organizations sort of reception to or willingness to engage with AIs it varies for a lot of reasons, and some of that might be regulatory. So we talk with some of our customers who just have a full, like, we're just not ready for this. We don't even want to engage with it at all. We want to do more research and we need to understand before taking that step. And we have other clients, organizations that are, interested in moving a little bit more quickly. I think it's also important to understand that there's a very broad spectrum of ways that you can engage with these tools. And that when you're thinking about sort of the safety, regulation, security of how you want to interact, there's everything from I'm going to implement my own very isolated implementation of a model that I can manage and control all the security around to I'm just going to interact with open AI through an API, using GPT. And it's important to understand the nuances of each of those. It's also really important to understand the cost implication of all of those, and also where your organization is in your own sort of readiness for applying AI. So making sure that you have data in a state where if you want to, you want to create your own sort of local instance of a model and train it yourself, that your data is in a state where you can do that readily. Otherwise, it can be a pretty large burden.
Yeah, I think the advice that I give our clients when they're starting to dip their toe into the water is the first and foremost, issue a clear governance policy for where you are today, right? Things like Copilot, they're just plugins and it's just a plugin into the IDE. Like, well, oftentimes developers have more access to their laptops than other people in a corporation have because they do need to install things and do things. And it's important to understand the difference between paid licenses and free licenses, right? For these things, and what your risk exposure is based on the licensing agreements for these tools too. There are, obviously some legal concerns around them, but a lot of most, at least as far as I have seen, most of them can be dealt with through, proper licensing and proper legal assessment of their privacy policies and how, in some cases, how these models train and what they train on, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you guys have any other additions to that? Because I know that's a hot topic. We get that question from our clients all the time.
Yeah, I'd add on to that. I think people would be surprised to find out that some aspects of OpenAI, the chat GPT, the chat completions and things of that nature can actually get HIPAA compliance. You can actually be certified. There's some caveats to go with that. There's some extra, effort you have to do to make that happen, but it can in fact happen. So I think it surprises people. I think security has become kind of the kind of a canard that people are attacking, but not fully understanding, in the
I
sense
agree.
that, we're here. This is this thing, and it does travel over the internet and communicate, but so does just about everything else we do today. And so these are not new problems. These are problems that have already been solved. It's a new technology, and we're trying to dial it in, but it's happening. I mean, people are getting their certifications, getting, all the things they need done in order to satisfy regulatory requirements.
It's research and it's education, right? You've got to do the legwork
Absolutely.
to understand, how these things are functioning and what the policies are around. But to your point, Zane, most of it is you can navigate it in a smart way, for
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely.
you mentioned organizations creating their own governance policy around AI. I think regardless of whether a company is choosing to engage with AI or not, that's so important,
Yeah,
because whether you decide to implement something that your employees are using or not, they may be going and using it. So,
exactly.
I think it's important to put out there in a formal way, what the expectation is, what's allowed, what the process is for approval if somebody's interested in using a tool, so that there's no ambiguity there.
Yeah, I mean, we put out very early on, basically over a year ago, that basically you could not use any of these tools for clients unless we had explicit permission from them, right? To protect our clients and to protect their IP and whatnot. And so that was set out very early on. And I think it's a way to get control over it until you are at a point where you can really, until you start implementing it.
Absolutely. Real quick, I do want to
Yeah,
apologize to Ma Shahid there. I just wanted some clarification from you, Ma. If you can kind of give us an idea where you're thinking, love to answer that question, because it looks like an interesting question, but I wasn't quite sure where you wanted to go with it. Go ahead. Sorry.
that's okay. All right. So the next one is future of AI and software development. I think the answers to our questions would change weekly, but as of today, what are the emerging trends in AI that will shape the future of software development? How should companies prepare for these changes? It's a
We've
hard
already,
question because it is
yeah,
changing so quickly, but
it's daily. I mean,
yeah.
what time is it? Ask me in an hour. So yeah, we already talked a little bit about Devon and that interesting development and what that portends. I think that we need to understand that this is the tip of the iceberg. We're already changing development in fundamental ways. Just off the top of my head, the normal DevOps process, for example, that we use in software development, have been using for quite some time, has now changed. When we're talking about artificial intelligence, machine learning, we have to adopt MLOps, which requires a shift. Now, it's not a seismic shift in this case, but it is a different approach that encompasses not just delivering the software, but constantly retraining the model over and over and over again on new data, which has to happen. So, we come up with a name for it. We call it MLOps. It is MLOps. It is like DevOps, but it is most assuredly not DevOps. So that's one big thing that I know that we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about Devon. There's Devica now, an open source version. So these development tools are going to just continue to evolve. And like we said, I mean, it's not a look out quarter to quarter. This is a week to week evolution. So pretty exciting to see there. I think one of the other aspects of product development that will be interesting to see as it evolves over time is how user experience starts to change based on the way we're able to interact with systems now. These sort of natural language interactions, these more insight-based interactions versus like a more workflow or kind of step-based interaction, I think is going to give a lot more, it's going to create a lot more of a powerful interaction with users. It's going to, allow different types of interactions and a whole different sort of value proposition for products engaging with their users. So I think that's going to be important to understand and for organizations to think about what those use cases look like for them. How is it that I might be able to engage with or provide value to one of my users that looks different now because I have these other ways that I can start to interact with them.
Well, users are going to start expecting something different, right? Their expectations for just how they interact with anything is going to change, right? I think we're already seeing that. The chat bots of old are not the chat bots of the new. Just as a
Yeah.
very, very simple example, right?
Endangered species.
Yeah, exactly. Where you can only get three types of answers back,
Yep.
and it's not very helpful.
Yep.
Versus, something that is constantly growing and give you answers back, and you feel like you're talking to a person versus, you're clearly talking to a bot that's is constantly confused by your questions, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think really, and I think to kind of sum up what we're all saying here is it's really going to require a different way of looking at the world because the
Yeah,
world has changed.
it's
It
very true.
has shifted now, just like it shifted, through all the phases of the various industrial revolutions we have. We are right in the beginning of the fourth industrial revolution. We are here. And this is the herald of it. And we are going to have to adapt, not only as professionals in business, but also as a species. Humanity is going to have to change. I noticed that we've got anonymous attendee asking a question about Neuralink and some other things. Are we going to reach a point a la Wall-E style where everything's handled right by artificial intelligence, and we'll just sit in chairs and get big and fat and roll around? I don't think that's going to happen, but certainly as a species, if we allow it to happen, I'm sure AI would love to do that, and we're starting to see signs of this technology moving in that direction, but only in a positive direction if we allow it to do that. And I think that's the key for us. There's two big things I want to point out in that vein. One is these AI, these LLMs, Chat GPT, are now being put into robots. They're now being put into a physical form so that they can interact with the world in 3D space. So
Well,
we're
I
no
think that,
longer.
sorry, Zane, I was just going to
No,
say, I
go
think that kind of bleeds into the the bigger discussion of ethical usage,
ahead.
right? Like,
Absolutely.
I mean, you can't, you hear, which is a whole, like, is a giant topic all on its own, right? Talk about security being the elephant in the room, ethical usage is kind of the other one, right? Like how to use it ethically, how it should be used, like misusage of it, things
Yeah.
like that, disinformation, fake images of
Make images.
people, all different types of things out there that you can do that are um that are not necessarily ethical to do.
Yeah.
So but for sure, things are definitely changing, and they're moving incredibly rapidly.
Yeah,
It is
absolutely.
amazing. I didn't mean to
Yeah.
cut you off. Sorry,
No,
Zane.
no, that's fine. I just wanted to address the Neuralink question and the Terminator question, which nobody's asked. I'm very surprised. Is this going to become Skynet? No, I don't think so. We are, and make no mistake about it, we are at the beginning of the age of AI. Right now, AI is just one step above, but not, as I've already said, a screwdriver, a wrench, or anything, but still very much tool-like. The next step of artificial intelligence is artificial general intelligence. And we used to think that was about 20 years away. Now we think it's about 2.
Yeah,
So that's accelerating very quickly. And at that point, AI thinks for itself. And then from there, it will be a very, very short hop from that to artificial super intelligence. So how do we mitigate that? How do we mitigate the fear that comes with that? They're real simple. We make sure that AI understands us as humans and works for the benefit of our species, and that's kind of where we're at. And whether it be software development, as we're doing today, as we've talked about so far, or anything else, any other endeavor, and it is in fact doing that. Let's make no mistake about it. AI is here; it's here to stay, and it is benefiting humanity. And it's up to us to make sure that it continues to do so.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're, go ahead, Ian.
I was just going to say, I think Neuralink's a really good example of how AI is also going to accelerate other technological advances, right? Um, and to sort of bring this back a little bit to maybe, right now and some tactical consideration for companies as they're thinking about this, beyond what you mentioned, Zain, and how we need to shape AI. I think the more tactical thing that organizations can do is create, opportunity for education for their employees. I think there's a lot of free available training that are being released from many companies, Google, for example. So the barrier to learning about it is getting lower and lower. And then exposure, looking for opportunity for people to just have some interaction with it, familiarize themselves with it, so that as this progress is happening, they're sort of growing and coming along for the journey instead of finding a year from now that things look much differently than they do today.
Yeah, for sure. I think we're just about out of time, and we wanted to open it for questions. I know we've been answering some of them as we've gone through. Let's see what we still have open.
Yeah, we addressed the Neuralink. I don't think we got to Neuralink, but just to finish that out, the Neuralink approach is just another extension of the human machine interface. It's not anything special or unique. We've done it before in a variety of other ways. It's just a higher level technology. So I think it has nothing but beneficial aspects. If you saw the video on Neuralink and that first patient, his life has changed. I mean, absolutely changed for the good because of Neuralink. So I think there's some positive things there.
And there's another question too, just the clarity. Sorry, go ahead, Ian.
I think from the what the future looks like beyond, like something like Neuralink will absolutely change the way that we interact with these AI tools or computer systems in general, as seen with the game of chess. But that shifts from this natural language interaction to something maybe different and more rapid. So who knows what that'll ultimately look like, but I think that will definitely have an impact on uh, interaction with AI in the future.
Okay. So Masha Head said, what are the key components that Sparq is trying to establish from an AI harnessing perspective? And the clarity on that was from a technology and software development perspective within Sparq.
The first thing, and we talked a bit about this, is finding opportunity for our delivery organization to get familiar with some of the coding, the generative AI coding tools. We've been doing that for quite a while now. So, that's going to be a common tool for engineers. So we want to get exposure there, and sort of where we have opportunity, as you said, we need consent from our clients when and where we can use it. But when we have the opportunity, we want to make sure that that's a part of the process for us because we think there's value there. And the feedback we've gotten from the opportunities we have to use it, it validates that.
There was another question that was put in which I think we addressed, but we can address it more directly. Traditionally, sometimes companies are apprehensive of engaging with new technology. This can happen for companies which are in the public space, those which are publicly traded, as well as those that are federally regulated. Are you seeing an imbalance in terms of those companies which are excited versus resistant to using AI? And I would say, I mean, from my perspective, I think there's more due diligence done for companies in the highly regulated space and publicly traded companies, right? They feel like they have more to lose. They're going to spend more time sending this stuff through legal, evaluating the usage, evaluating the policies, evaluating their security. But from what I've seen, they recognize they cannot wait either, right? So they are already pursuing these things despite what they feel is some level of hesitance. They realize in order to be competitive, they are going to have to move forward. So these are questions and conversations we have with clients all the time. This is a constant merry-go-round of questions, and we know we need to do something. We don't know what we need to do. How have you guys approached this? What have you done? And again, we always say to start with governance, right? And you do need to have your legal department look things over, especially if you're very concerned, right? So you can really understand where your risk is, and where it's not, and understanding the mitigation of those risks. And there, like I said, as we mentioned before, there are ways to navigate that. And it is completely possible. We see large companies and clients of ours out there using these things today.
Yeah, I would add on to that, and from the front lines, from the tech perspective, one of the things that I often get asked too is, are we too late? There's this sense of urgency. And my answer to that is no, you're never too late. But in particular, and that's kind of a stock answer, a little bit of a cop out. So let me answer it more fully. And the answer is real simple. Right now is the perfect time to get into AI because we're at that nascent stage. If you ask me this question a year or two from now, after we have AGI, and you have no experience with AI, then yeah, I'm going to say you probably missed the boat, and now you've got to play catch up.
Yep.
So you really need to act now while supplies last, I guess is where I'm saying.
Well,
really get engaged, right?
I think there was a certain level of maturity that had to
yeah,
happen, and I think we're
absolutely.
there. To your point,
We just
Zane,
got
right? Like
there.
it's
Yeah. Yep.
yeah,
I agree. No, I agree 100%, Janet. You're spot on. It took a while for us to get there, but we're enterprise ready now. At least for in some sectors, and
right. I wouldn't
OpenAI.
say across the board,
Yeah,
but
no, not across the board. I wish, but we're getting there. So don't hesitate, and certainly don't equivocate. And to that end, here's what we tend to recommend with customers.
Oh,
Zane,
you're
you're on mute.
muted, Zain.
Yeah, I hit that space bar. That's always fun. Let's try that again. There's always a crawl, walk, run type of approach, right? Which is really
Yeah,
what you need to do. Don't try to implement the world's best AI, whatever. Just insert product here. Instead, start simple. The simplest thing you could do, take a look at your website. Take a look at maybe you have a chatbot on your website, or maybe you don't. Get one. That is the lowest hanging fruit you can do to really start getting your head around AI is conversational chat as opposed to the chat bot. Get that conversational chat going. We do that all the time at Sparq. It's great. We use it for a whole lot of stuff, and it is one of those key elements that get you in, will get you that experience, and get you started down the longer road of more artificial intelligence usage. So.
Yeah, I'd throw out too that, it's generally never a good idea to implement a technology for technology's sake, right? So it's important to understand what those use cases are for your organization. Make sure that you're implementing something that has value. The good news is there's so many different use cases that can be applied, that AI can be applied to, that you're almost certain to have one that is a good fit. And to Zane's point, you can start with something sort of lower barrier to entry that is going to have a good value proposition. It's going to solve some problem, create some efficiency for your organization. But I just want to emphasize that you still have to go into any scenario like this, understanding what the value proposition is first, get that fleshed out, and
Absolutely.
then look for the implementation, the solution.
Yeah,
I think the fear too comes from not realizing how much you're interacting with AI today. I think it was like the Pew Research Center, the beginning of last year, did a poll of like 11,000 Americans, asking them how often do they interact with AI, and it was like overwhelmingly almost never or very little. But you have to realize, like, your spam filter, your Netflix, your Siri, your, like, the list goes on and on. Facial recognition for security systems in large box stores. All different kinds of things that are out there. Even your car's if you have a car that does recognition of you going over the line or things like that, that's also part of it. That's a form of AI. Like, you are interacting with it daily. And we are relying on those things daily. So it just something to think about too, that it's much more common and has been in use a lot longer than I think some people realize. So
That's a great point. Great point, Janet.
any other questions? Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, appreciate it, Dave.
All right.